Thank you. Next one.
Moving on to signs, page 50.
Was it? Okay, well, hang on. Yanni's not here, so we'll just... Can we defer that one?
Okay.
Subdivision development and earthworks.
Noise just before that.
Oh, noise, sorry.
Sorry.
I ticked signs before I got through it. Yeah.
We don't have our noise expert today, but I've asked John Alps, from our environmental health officer, if you could please join us here at the table.
Yep. What page are we on?
57.
57.
So where did they stop the last time?
Well, 57. Yeah.
So
they questioned the issue relating to Littleton and putting in a more restrictive rule there.
Yes, that's right. Because Andrew raised this.
That's right.
But Andrew's not here today. But that's I think, is he good with this now? Or
all of them together?
No. Littleton's always had a different rule from everyone else.
And this no rule, basically.
This is bringing it into line with the rest.
Yes.
But Andrew, as I recall, raised a concern about the restrictive nature of that.
He felt it might jeopardise.
In solving a problem that wasn't apparently a problem at this stage.
Oh, and that is exactly it. It's not a problem at this stage.
Yeah.
Looking forward, it's simply putting in a belts and braces approach, but we're in your hands as to which way you'd like to deal with it.
Yeah, we could put them all in Littleton. and then close the tunnel. No, just joking. I think the issue is that is a standardised response required for Littleton compared with other parts of the city, and that I don't know.
The issue with Littleton is not so much the levels in the town centre, but the proximity of the residential and also the elevation of the residential above the town centre. So there's a potential there, if the levels are too high, to cause a considerable amount of nuisance and issues for the residential. We've had an example of that occurring there with a resident who's not actually in close proximity, but he's in an elevated position above the township and had problems with bass from one of the bars there. So the idea with this is to control the noise in the town centre, which will also help assist keeping the amenity in the residential areas.
Right. So is this after 10 o'clock at night?
It's the old standard was basically 65 any time in the town centre, and the resident, but it's generally controlled by the residential levels, which are 40 at night, so after 10 o'clock.
Right.
So measurements we've taken in the town centre would indicate they would comply certainly with the 55 daytime. It may be a little bit of a challenge for 45 at night, but it's with the right design of the premises there, and there's certainly opportunity with a lot of new buildings going in there to do that.
Is that going to affect current premises there, like Wunderbar or places? Is that the sort of place you're talking about?
Yeah, yes. I mean, they've done quite a lot of work to ensure that they currently meet the standard there.
And do they?
Yes, they do in the residential area.
Right.
I'm not too sure about the in close proximity to the bar.
I mean, these places have been there for years. I mean, this is, Port Town. It's like,
I used to live there, it's just...
Exactly. I mean, you were down there at night,
Yeah. No, so, definitely.
I mean...
I know the Wunderbar very well.
It's the character of the town. It's a port town, it's lively. And,
I'm not... Kids, families, I completely understand that, but I'm not sure what the local view is. I'm assuming that they would want some protection from noise.
Look, the thing is that, I think that probably the solution is to notify this, but also encourage Councillor Turner to talk to the locals to submit on it. Because if the submissions from the locals are overwhelmingly, we just don't want to go there, then, then maybe the independent hearings panel would be interested in hearing that. I just think that if I were, if we were the decision makers, I would want us to notify the standard so that people could let us know what they think about that. Because if you don't notify anything, then people won't put up won't put up the alternative.
That's right. This can be tested through the submissions process.
All right. So, okay. So I think we should move. Well, I don't think we need to move that. We'll just tick this one off. Yeah. But if you could. If you could just prepare a note for me to refer to Councillor Turner, because I think as part of our communication generally about the whole notification process, we could do a Littleton section saying these are the sorts of issues you might like to raise, and we could do that in consultation with Councillor Turner and maybe the community board as well.
Yes.
That would be great. Thank you. Right, next one. Subdivision development and earthworks.
No, there are more noise ones to go through.
Oh,
to
there's
the end
more
of this
noise.
Chapter. Sorry.
God.
We only got, I think, to the first one.
Okay.
So
58 now.
58. I think they're all fairly straightforward, but...
Oh, I see. We just haven't ticked them off.
No.
Yeah. Yep. And Christchurch Stadium, that's... Well, it's the temporary facility, isn't it, that you're referring to?
Just get down to this one.
Well, basically they're saying that because it's going to be there longer, then we need to extend the noise provisions. Is that all right? I've met a few people in the lift this morning that went to the concert last night. Ricky Martin. Yeah, they're all jiggling away. Yep.
Right.
But, yeah, no, so I mean for games and for concerts it does need that to be recognised that it's extended. So what's the next bit?
Recommendation 30.
Recommendation 30.
Page 60.
Yep, military and emergency. More firearms, yeah. And then we've got
31.
31. Helicopters allowed to land, yes, I think we'll allow that. Recommendation, is that it?
Yep.
32. No? 32. Activities near infrastructure and Christchurch Airport, yep. And the next one?
33.
33. 34. 35. 36. Oops. And that's it, 36. Yep, that's a tick.
Right.
No, it recognises the airport. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to subdivision development and earthworks, page 70.
Page 70, right.
Oh, beg pardon.
Oh,
Are they from you?
yes.
Right. Sorry, there are a couple of amendments here in relation to the engine testing. Yeah, through. The minister didn't comment, or the minister's people didn't comment on these new rules, but these are as a resolution to correct some errors. There was actually a gap in one of the policies with regard to putting in the 55 dB LDN line for engine testing noise contour. It's in regard to noise insulation being required within that area. So that's just adding those extra words in to reflect what we've already got in the rest of that chapter. Beg your pardon? Well, it's just tying up with the fact that we've already got a proposed rule requiring acoustic insulation within the 55 engine testing contour. That's largely within the 55 airport noise contour, but there's a bulge where it actually extends out, so there's an extra area that would need to be acoustically insulated. The bulge is sort of at the end of Harewood Road, because the engine testing occurs primarily at the Orchard Road site.
Yep. All right. Do you need a motion for this purpose?
Yes, please. That's yes.
I'll move that. Seconded by Vicky Buck. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Good.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, subdivision development and earthworks. Have we just not dealt with the whole lot of this?
That's correct.
Right, okay, so let's go through this. The first one, recommendation 37.
Yeah, without the big picture.
Oh, okay, well, isn't there one that has exercised us in terms of the recommendation versus what we want to do?
Are you wanting a description of what this chapter does?
Just
okay.
Basically
Page
70.
70. Just 2 minutes on the big picture.
Sure,
Sorry.
so this is stage 2 of the subdivision chapter, so there was already a subdivision chapter, and that dealt with priority residential zones, commercial zones and industrial zones. It included all of the general servicing and transport things. This stage 2 really just fills in all the other zones, so all the open space, rural, etc. All those other zones now come into here. And the other addition is in relation to natural and cultural heritage. There's a few rules around that that are coming from stage 2, which are at 8.3.8. Yeah, there is an earthworks section in here as well, and it deals, it's a bit complicated, but it deals with infill of quarries in some instances. So we've had to revise the bits and pieces between rural chapter and the earthworks section of this chapter.
Okay, so the only part of quarries dealt with in this chapter is the infilling of the quarries post the
outside
completion
the
of...
yeah. And I think
after they've taken everything out, they then fill them in. And have we put rules that are enforceable about what is allowed to go back into that space?
we can come to that later on in the...
Right, okay. So that's not in this chapter?
It is in this chapter.
It is, but it's on page
Subdivision
73.
development and earthworks.
Whereabouts? 73.
So these are looking at the Minister's comments on that chapter. You have actually received the chapter itself and the section 32 as well.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but my
minister's
reading
comment
of
on
the recommendations is that in this area there is nothing other than the quarries and landform, the location, gradient and depth of the quarry pit. Is it recommendation 45 that we're referring to? That's the only one that seems to have anything of substance.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So really what the Minister was raising is there was some overlap between the rural chapter and the earthworks chapter that there shouldn't have been, so it's just taking that out.
So most of this is just niceties.
It's fairly straightforward.
In terms of just quarry work for earthworks.
Right. But there's nothing about what goes in there. And
back into the quarry?
Yeah.
There's an existing rule in the earthworks section that deals with content of fill.
Right.
And they need to comply with that.
But we've already notified that?
Well, it's within stage 2, and there were no comments on that from the Minister.
Right. So we've already got that in the thing that and so we don't change that. No. It's already there.
It's in rural.
No, it's in both chapters actually.
Yep. Ref?
In terms of the fill, is there a good monitoring system? Because obviously they can dump whatever they like without anyone knowing. And that's probably more the concern than the digging out.
Yeah, the monitoring probably is somewhat of an issue. It's certainly not something that we can write a rule on in the district plan to say you have to be there and monitor it. I guess it's more something that if there was an issue that we could go back and
Who's
Couldn't we
legally
have a-
responsible for monitoring the landfill?
Probably ECAN, isn't it?
No, I think it would be us. If we've got rules in our district plan, then we need to be monitoring and enforcing those.
I mean, we should have rules around the fill,
Yeah.
and it should be done in a certain way. Otherwise, it just becomes a potential rubbish tip. I mean, that's how
But they
traditionally
have
it's
been.
done.
That's how Bexley got created.
And that's the
What's
point
the
of
other
the
one?
content
Your
of
one, a Waka.
No, it wasn't.
a
Not
Waka
where
pit?
the
I mean,
Pacific Park was developed.
Was that a Waka pit?
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge potential. Because there's
There should be some kind of inspection before land gets filled back up. I mean, because you're going to have some good operators, and then you'll have some less good ones who don't really care. And
But the district plan has the rules. It's not the enforcement.
right, okay.
So, but I think that what councillors are saying is that they want to have an idea of the enforcement regime so that they can, really understand how this is going to be meaningfully enforced. Because we all now know examples of where the failure of enforcement, it's not so much the rules, it's the failure of
And
enforcement.
then it should be a cost. So that the cost of a permit to quarry should price in the fact that there are extra costs in actually enforcing and monitoring what goes back into the fill.
relatively low. So all refilling of quarries will require consent. So you have the enforcement through the
That's
conditions
right.
of consent.
Yeah.
but can I just be clear, what are they allowed to fill? I get daily emails about what's going into quarries. Are there, what are they actually allowed to fill quarries with under our current scheme?
Under the current plan, essentially the same content of fill provisions have been carried over.
Clean fill.
So
Clean
It is
fill.
clean fill, isn't it?
clean fill meaning
Fill that is clean.
Anything that's not putrescible or rotten or rubbish, essentially. So it can include concrete rubble from demolition, for example, but shouldn't include timber. Is it tested? The rule doesn't require it to be tested.
But
Well-
is that the rule or the consent provisions?
Not all of them will be consented. If it's a rural quarry zone, then there may not be a consent for that.
I think we need an overarching report on the whole process from woe to go. Just for our sake, so because we can't see where the gap is. All we can see is that there is a problem, and it is, in my view, a little ticking time bomb for the city, maybe a future generation.
Is it useful for me to get someone representing the enforcement arm of council to this meeting?
No, I think a written report would be easier for us to digest, a short written report on the start to finish of quarrying and filling, so that we can, and then I think we could have a meeting around, having the different arms here to go through it. But I mean, we're not going to do it in the time frame before we notify. But I have to say that this worries me, because if we do lose the argument on the exposure of our land, exposure of our multiple exposures of our groundwater, it's actually the fill that then fills me with trepidation about what that could potentially do as well.
Okay, I'd like to try and bring that back to you before the 2nd of May, so that this is included in this round of notifications.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not saying to hold this up. I think that this. I can't see that this chapter, because I mean, what you've said is that we've already passed the
rural, yes.
the chapters.
Yes, that's right.
So, but I know that councillors around the table, this is causing enormous anxiety out and amongst various parts of our community, and we want to make sure that we've got a very clear understanding of start to finish,
right.
Quarrying to re-landscaped environment. Phil?
It just seemed to me that because it's complex, and my understanding is that ECAN are involved with the monitoring enforcement too, and so is it MB, but that in fact somebody, besides the short report, someone to speak to it would perhaps
Oh yeah,
help.
it's both.
Yeah, as well,
We want both. So we want a written report and we want, but it may involve ECAN as well because they will be part of that. They are responsible for monitoring the groundwater.
And can I just check that you're okay that that happens after the 2nd of May and that this rule stays in there?
Well,
Or would you like us to try and achieve that? It would have to be done next week.
Yeah.
Around the enforcement.
Does anyone see that we have to hold this up for notification?
Can't rot, then that's fine. But what's going in there is not just clean fill that can't rot. So it's probably more the enforcement of it.
It's more the enforcement side, which is not a district plan matter.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're happy to come back with you after the 2nd of May on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Phil?
I just had another question in relation to this, and we've discussed it before, and I'm referring to, and it crossed my mind after we raised questions about the depth of the quarrying and the impact on the aquifer and the water. So it's around actually the same area, the Yaldhurst Road area, where there's a proposal to have a football sports complex. And I'm just so when they make application, does that application fit this section here, this chapter here?
In terms of requiring consent for earthworks, they probably would require consent.
And so I'm just, that's another example to me of where there's going to be some digging down, and I'm just, I'll be interested to know, in fact, is our plan sufficient to actually, keep aquifers safe?
Yes.
It is, in your view?
Yeah, so the volumes in the earthworks section are set fairly low so that we do catch these applications. So there would be a resource consent and there would be appropriate conditions put on that.
Can I just clarify what happens in the quarrying area, in those zoned areas called quarrying, when the quarry stuff has been depleted and it's been infilled with apparently clean stuff, what can those spaces then be used for?
Yes, so I guess once you come to do another land use on top of that, you'd need to, I guess if it was a building or a house, there are requirements under the building code in terms of foundations and the ground underneath that. And there's also the NES for uncontaminated land, so if it had been contaminated, you would have to comply with the rules within that as well. If it had been contaminated, well, you'd probably have to do some soil testing. There are triggers in the NES that would, in some instances, require you to do that. Yeah.
On some of that quarry zone land, and you didn't know what was in there, you would need to test the soil, and you would need to get a building consent.
You would need a building consent for a building anyway.
And that tests the stability of the ground?
Well, I guess it's the same as any property. I mean, I don't know if my property is contaminated or not. I don't see what the difference is. If you wanted to be sure about contamination, you would need to get somebody to test it.
Right. So just in terms of what you can do, sorry Phil, on those, so quarry zones, quite a big chunk of land, you finished quarrying, what can you then do? Never mind about the contamination. What are you allowed to build?
I haven't had enough to do with the Rural Quarry Zone to know what other activities are permitted. So I can't answer that
presumably as
question.
they continuously deplete the aggregate, then the land use will change quite.
Yeah, you're right. I just don't know what that chapter has set as permitted activities.
Does anyone?
I don't off the top of my head. I can bring Adele here if you like.
Just at some stage it would be really good to know, because looking forward, it obviously has a big impact on that.
Yeah. And generally that would come through as a plan change. If all of that quarrying within the quarry zone were finished, obviously the owners of the quarry would want to sell the land after it's been rehabilitated, and if they want to sell it for, to be available for other activities, they would initiate a plan change.
Phil?
I just have one other question in between there. Like you said, in your view, and I'm not questioning your expertise, but that the aquifer would be safe in terms of a development like the one I was referring to. But what when it comes to foundations for buildings, for example, that are likely or proposed for there, what depth are they allowed to go down to?
And piling. I can't answer that question. I'm not a building code. I'm not up to speed with the building code, but there's a range of foundation options. and most modern houses probably are built using a concrete pad, particularly in the areas west of the city where the land is better, and it's more likely to be a concrete pad than piles.
It'd be useful for me.
I think also that the aquifer depth in those areas are reasonably, it's quite a long way down, like 3 or 4 metres at least, in those areas. So I think there would be some pretty deep piles. But yeah, we can find.
Yep. Yeah, the specifics will be useful actually.
Okay, so essentially we're going to tick off this chapter, and we're going to get a briefing on all of the issues that we've raised, and actually organise a separate workshop to discuss those. And in many respects, it would be quite good to do that in a live stream session, because I think that the public are really, really interested in this as an issue, and it might be a really good feed into the District Plan Independent Hearings Panel hearings. All right?